Hello and welcome to Hacking Pixels. Hacking Pixels covers some of the hottest cybersecurity news from around the internet, along with a twist of retro video game nostalgia. Hacking Pixels is brought to you by Actionable Security, securing small businesses with actionable insights. Actionable Security specializes in cybersecurity services tailored for small businesses such as risk assessments, email hardening, virtual chief information security officer advisory, and a lot more. Go to actionablesec.com for more information. Welcome to our second episode. I'm your host, Frank Moreno, founder of Actionable Security. Today, we're going to talk about securing Active Directory service accounts, quantum-resistant cryptography, unmanaged devices, and Gemini code assist. Then we'll be finishing things up with our retro game of the month. Before we get started, some updates to stories from the last episode. We talked a bit about the Subaru Starlink flaw that let hackers hijack cars and how we are essentially trading our privacy and safety for the latest and greatest tech features. I ran across another example of this where hackers are compromising car cameras in minutes to use as reconnaissance tools. These are firmware vulnerabilities with the car software, so it will most likely require a trip to the dealer to fix. Next is our favorite China-based AI model. DeepSeek is in the news again, raising some privacy concerns by sending data to TikTok's Chinese parent company. This serves as a good reminder to understand how your data is being used by these models before entering anything into them. Lastly, a new iOS security update came out a few days after our last podcast. Basically, iOS 18.3.1 patches a sophisticated physical attack that requires access to your iPhone. It's always good to be on the safe side, so make sure you install that update. So let's get to our first story, 5 best practices for securing Active Directory service accounts. Windows Active Directory service accounts are prime targets due to their elevated privileges and access to important systems. Windows administrators need to implement strong security measures to protect their AD environment from security compromises. This article highlights some best practices, such as following the principle of least privilege. While vendors want domain admin privileges for all their service accounts, they rarely need them. You want to reduce your target and have as few service accounts with domain admin privileges as possible. The use of MFA for interactive service accounts, when possible, is also mentioned in the article. This one's easier said than done. One of the easier things you could do is ensure you're using unique service accounts and pin them to specific servers so that they can only work on those servers. This way, if one is compromised, it doesn't compromise all the servers, and an attacker can't easily pivot from one server to another. Removing service accounts that are not in use, that's a no-brainer. You should have a process to audit your service accounts on a regular basis to reduce the attack surface. Monitoring your service accounts is also a good idea. Looking for suspicious activity or anomalies, making sure your logs are going someplace like a SIM. So if there is an incident, the incident responder can find out exactly what happened. Lastly, using robust passwords and changing them frequently. In Windows environments, leverage tools such as group managed service accounts, which is free, to automate password management. Something like Silverfort is another option to look at if you're not just Windows. These tools make password management for service accounts something that you don't have to think about and help ensure things don't break when changes are made to your service accounts. Okay, next up, Google Cloud introduces quantum-safe digital signatures in KMS. Google is integrating quantum-resistant cryptography into their key management service to help prevent harvest now, decrypt later attacks in a quantum computer future. So Google has finally joined the party with Microsoft and Amazon. All of the big three now have implemented quantum-resistant cryptography features into their cloud platforms to help safeguard our data. Speaking of Microsoft, they just introduced a fancy new quantum chip a few weeks ago. So, quantum computing is one step closer to reality, and so is breaking traditional encryption methods, which is why it's great to see Google taking these first steps. While there are no quantum computers capable of breaking traditional encryption methods today, the concern right now is that threat actors are grabbing encrypted data today and then using quantum computing to crack the encryption in the future. So, Google and others integrating quantum resistant cryptography into their cloud offerings gives us at least some protection. Just think of it as an extra layer of defense against the rise of Skynet. If you're using any of these cloud technologies, it's a good idea to turn on these quantum resistant cryptography features today. And you should also take a look at the NIST post quantum cryptography standard for more information on how to protect your data in a quantum computing world. Next story, unmanaged devices, the overlooked threat CISOs must confront. Let's talk about laptops, tablets, and phones that access company data but don't have any type of management software on them. These devices lack visibility and controls necessary to properly protect the organization's data. Microsoft reported that 92% of ransomware attacks involve unmanaged devices. That's a crazy statistic, and it highlights the importance of protecting these devices. Here's a very common scenario that we see at Actionable Security. Employee personal devices are not required to have a mobile device management solution to access their email and Microsoft 365. Because employees also have access to their OneDrive data, they could sync that data to their personal devices. And since there's no enforced controls, there's no way of knowing if that device is encrypted or not. So now, if that device is lost or stolen, the company data might be compromised. The clear answer to resolve this is that the same controls to protect the organization data should be applied to any device accessing that data. But when we start to allow personal devices to access that data, things get a little bit cloudier. Since these devices are not owned by the organization and are not used exclusively for work, we also need to be sensitive to their owner's privacy. For many, installing an MDM is a concern. Is the company tracking my web traffic? Can they see my texts? Can they access my personal photos? So, what are some options for small businesses? Prevent the use of personal devices altogether. Issue corporate owned devices. This is easier said than done for cash strapped startups. If that's not an option, have a detailed bring your own device policy that requires an MDM solution installed to access company data and outlines exactly what the organization can and cannot do or see. Another thing to think about is reducing your risk and attack surface. Implement server side controls to reduce your risk. Set up conditional access policies, disable OneDrive sync, limit email access to web only email, or set up app only based controls. Only allowing access on specific devices as well is another way you can reduce your risk. Something like an iPhone is far less risky than a laptop because it's encrypted by default when you create a passcode and essentially lives in a walled garden. Each organization is different, so there's no one size fits all solution. Your best bet is to work with a security expert like the ones we have at Actionable to understand your environment and challenges so you can reduce your overall risk. On to our last story. Google just made AI coding assistants free for everyone with very generous limits. Basically, Google has announced that its Gemini Code Assist will be available for free for everyone to use. We talked previously about AI and how it needs safeguards and how it's getting better and better every day. What happens when it's so good that you don't need a traditional programmer anymore? I was recently playing around with Microsoft Canvas, which is a tool to help build small business apps with no code. And it has an AI assistant where you basically tell it exactly what you want to build and it builds it. It's certainly not perfect and resulted in something unusable, but it got the gist of what I was going for, maybe 10%. Just think in 5 to 10 years from now what it could do. I think if I was a programmer, I would be a little concerned. Sure, experts with experience will always be needed, and even people with skills for legacy programming languages like COBOL. But with advanced AI, that same COBOL program could just as easily be rewritten. Also, from a threat actor's perspective, the barrier for creating malicious code, phishing toolkits, and more will be a lot lower, which will increase sophisticated attacks. And we'll need next generation tools, probably AI based themselves, to defend against them. Ultimately, as AI continues to evolve, it will redefine programming as we know it. Tools like Gemini, Code Assist, and Microsoft Canvas are just the beginning. In the coming years, we might see a AI driven transformation that not only reshapes how we build technology, but could also spark a AI war on the cybersecurity front. The challenge will be to harness AI's immense potential responsibly while developing robust security safeguards to fend off the darker uses. It's that time again to take a break from the serious stuff and talk about something a bit more nostalgic. Our featured retro game this month is another one of my favorites, Castlevania Symphony of the Night for the original PlayStation. Released in 1997 by Konami, this was an action role playing game and a direct sequel to Castlevania Rondo of Blood on the TurboGrafx 16. Featuring Alucard as the main protagonist exploring Dracula's castle, this game coined the phrase Metrovania as its gameplay was a combination of traditional Castlevania games and Nintendo's Metroid. It's also often cited by critics as one of the best video games of all time. Classic monster movies like Dracula, Frankenstein, and Creature from the Black Lagoon helped draw me into the world of Castlevania, along with the 80s classic The Monster Squad. My love for Castlevania goes way back to the original Nintendo, with fond memories of playing Castlevania, Simon's Quest, and Dracula's Curse, which even today are some of my favorite games. The 3D entries for the Nintendo 64, I was not as in love with. I was beyond excited when I heard a new 2D entry was coming to the PlayStation. At that time, Sony had a ban on non-3D games, but thankfully Symphony of the Night was an exception. While it was a 2D game, it had this amazing 3D opening of Dracula's castle, and it started things off with a bang with the final showdown between Richter Belmont and Dracula from Rondo of Blood, which was something rarely seen at the time. Being such a Castlevania fan, this was the reason I owned a PlayStation. It was the same Castlevania I loved, but with a twist. It combined RPG elements from Final Fantasy VII, which I was obsessed with at the time, along with exploration from Metroid, which is also one of my favorite games. Whip-wielding Belmont was no more, replaced by Dracula's sword-wielding son from Castlevania III, another one of my favorites. It was different, but in a good way from the previous games, and it sucked me in. Fantastic music, multiple boss battles, exploring the castle upside down, and getting to play Richter Belmont once you completed the game are some of the things that kept me coming back to Symphony of the Night. Today, Castlevania is probably better known for the Netflix animated series than it is the games. There has not been a mainline Castlevania game released in over a decade. With the success of the Netflix series, there's been several rumors that Konami is dusting off the coffin and plans to resurrect Dracula once again. That's all, folks. Thanks for listening. Join us next month. Same bat time, same bat channel. And remember, this episode of Hacking Pixels is brought to you by Actionable Security, your trusted partner in safeguarding small businesses. With decades of experience, Actionable Security offers tailored cybersecurity services such as risk assessments, email hardening, and virtual chief information security officer advisory. For more details on how we can help protect your business, visit actionablesec.com.